All right, so we're going live now. I can edit this live part here, so I'm not worried about that.
That's fine.
I'm going to go press the button.
Yeah. Go turn the button on so that everybody can actually see us. And are we live now, George? Almost.
Live in 3. Go. We're live now.
Okay. So welcome everybody to Nite Meds, a podcast about the supernatural and unexplained, which used to be Alien Genesis. It was Alien Genesis for those of you that are...
Oh, wow. Go ahead. It's Frank Vignola Goes Live.
Frank Vignola Goes Live. For our loyal... How many subscribers did we get up to?
We've been up to like 100 and something.
Yeah, and then we lost them all.
No. We haven't lost anything. You think we lost them all, but we haven't.
Okay.
And the thing is, like, you just have to be patient and see how it works.
Oh, well, then we're in trouble because I'm not patient.
Oh, we know that.
About anything whatsoever.
We know that.
But we were Alien Genesis. We were Alien Genesis for the first 3 podcasts, and then decided to let it morph into, well, basically 2 other podcasts. So for those of you that don't already know...
That was your little alien thing.
What was that? What was that? Was that from Alien? Was that left over from Alien Genesis? The last gray being beamed up.
That's what it is. The last alien being.
So anyway, for those of you that are listening, we did Alien Genesis. We did 3 shows. Well, we had about 500 views. I don't think we had 100 subscribers. We might have had 60 or 70.
No, we've had more than 100.
But no, we had a healthy amount of views. Anyway. I decided that I wanted to start talking about all kinds of stuff, including aliens. Just about everything supernatural, unexplained, that people can think of. So we'll still be talking about aliens at different times, but that's not all we're going to be talking about. As a matter of fact, we have a show about witchcraft coming up where I'm going to have a coven of witches as our guest, George.
That is hot.
A coven of witches will actually be here. And then also the other podcast that we just have to figure out when we're going to start it, but it's going to start and it's going to be weekly as soon as we start, which is this week or next week through the election. It's going to be called Trolling Trolls. And here's the idea. The idea is basically that every tin foil hat wearing Trump supporter out there that wants to tell us why Hillary Clinton is responsible for Armageddon before it happens, can come on the show and make their case. And I just want these folks, I just want these Clinton haters, these Trump supporters, these flag wavers, I just want them to come on and be themselves as big and as loud and as unabashedly as they can be. I just want you to come on here and be you because I want people to see what you're really all about. And I think that might make a difference. I lost my sidekick.
No, not yet. I'm just trying to fix stuff up so you look good.
Well, that's going to take a lot more than bending the neck there on that.
It takes a little bit, not too much.
All right, so we're coming back. And then this tall gentleman in the corner that apparently George is using the sight line of his shoulder. His name is John Field. He's on with us today. We'll get to John in a little bit here. So are we ready to go now, George?
Yes, we are.
Can I tell you this is feeling more and more like being in like the drama club in high school every time we do this?
Yeah?
We gotta get our shit together, brother.
Well, I mean, the thing is that we're such new equipment. Sometimes I've never been late.
Right.
You're always late. But
what?
But it's okay.
Oh, okay. But we're going to have call letters and phone lines and all that kind of good stuff.
We actually do have that already. We have a lot of that already.
All right. So I guess that's all going to be available for the next podcast.
Definitely.
But before we bore everybody to death with all this housekeeping thing, so what we're going to be talking about today, when we finally get there, is we're going to be talking about reptilians. So we're still on aliens a little bit. We're going to be talking about reptilians. And then we're going to be talking about New World Order, Illuminati, one world government, however you want to describe that. That's what we're going to be talking about too. And And as always, George, once he gets done tweaking the board, is going to be riding his iPad, and he's going to be able to tell
how many people are watching,
who's calling in, if anybody's got a comment or a question. By the way, we have one official fan. Amy Foster is a big fan of the show.
Big ups for Amy Foster.
Amy Foster, a very incredibly talented comedian.
Mm-hmm.
And the sponsor, there will be an announcement made next week.
All right, awesome.
So we are picking up a sponsor. Sorry you're just having to sit there for all this housekeeping, John.
Oh, no.
We were off for a week because of the holidays, and so we're doing a little bit of housekeeping. So let's get into the show now. What do you say? We all got everything?
We got everything.
Can you tell if people box in?
Well, I'm going to explain the whole thing to you.
Okay.
If you see one listener,
right,
that's not just one listener. Some people do not press to go on and comment, but they can still listen to the show without having to press and go comment.
I know all that. I'm asking,
okay.
Can you read if people send in comments?
Yes, of course.
Yes, of
course.
But we don't have call-ins yet. So
but we have people tuning in. So
right. So we still have to. So if you have any kind of question, comment, statement, anything at all you want us to talk about, anything that you want to say, on topic or off, feel free to dialogue box us. Is that the right way to say it?
Exactly. Just just text us.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Yeah, it's right there. Okay, so let's get to it. So first, John, I know you're a comedian.
Yes.
And then you also are something of a conspiracy theorist. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, I just like I like the stories of conspiracy theories. Like, I go to church. That's a big conspiracy. That guy up in the sky controls everything. But I think conspiracy theories are a nice way to kind of talk about the bigger world around us and how things are structured. And I think it's a good metaphor. That's why I kind of led with lizard people, because lizard people, I don't think, you get down to brass tacks, and I don't think lizard, you go behind the skin of Hillary Clinton, there's a lizard person. But you look at her personality and the fact that she doesn't really blink a lot and kind of doesn't have a lot of personality. I think a great way of articulating that, you could say, is she makes me uncomfortable in a weird way, but I want to support her and kind of support the big system. But another thing is just you look at it and it's well, beneath that skin is a lizard person.
Every booking agent we've ever met is a lizard person.
Yeah.
Let's get that out of the way.
But we know
right
that
now.
already.
Let's get that. No, but okay, so is there anything you want to mention about yourself comedy-wise? You want to tell everybody a little bit about who you are, what you've done, and that kind of thing?
I've been doing comedy 4 years. I've been in Vice Magazine and College Humor. Currently I'm publishing it's like a 10,000 circulation comedy newspaper called Terrible Tribune. We're trying to figure out how to be funny without being the Onion. It's physical paper that you can pick up in the cool parts of Brooklyn, like where lizard people, banker kids, trust fund kids are.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. I just did the Hudson Valley Comedy Festival. I've been in Orlando Independent Comedy Festival and clubs and colleges across the country. Right? That's the most vague.
Okay, so like with a lot of other guests, basically when we start to talk about the supernatural and the unexplained, regardless of topic, the place. What am I trying to say? Tough time with words today. The place that I've come from is that I'm a regular guy. I'm John Q. Public. Whether you want to talk about ghosts or aliens or whatever, do I believe they exist? Maybe, but I'm not a conspiracy nut, or I'm not somebody that's committed to the idea. So if someone is passionate about a particular idea, conspiracy idea, or an opinion about aliens or witchcraft or the rest of it, I'm basically saying, I'm just a regular guy that's not making fun of it, but make your case. So I would say, is there a way that you feel that you can make a case that there are truly lizard aliens on this planet, or is it just something that you're, having fun musing about?
It's just a great way to start a conversation and to kind of, I think, most cultural stuff, just all the movies you watch, like they live. That's where, first of all, the idea of lizard people, I'm almost sure that in V is where those ideas came in our culture. Is just, every time there's anxiety in our culture, like a big anxiety and a big thing we want or don't want and that we're scared of,
Right.
like it comes out sideways in the movies and the stories we tell each other. Like, AIDS was scary during the 80s, so
Right.
you see a lot of vampire movies. Bush administration, it felt like the world's about to collapse on itself, and you have a lot of zombie
I think
movies.
you just lost the Facebook feed.
Oh, no.
Oh no,
Well, I think and
Are we
then it
good?
popped back on.
no, we're fine.
On and off. Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is that you don't really truly believe that there are lizard aliens on this planet. You're more looking at it like it's a sort of
Metaphor.
Metaphor.
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, that's a little different than most of our guests.
Yeah.
Like we've had people on here that maintain there's an alien war going on as we speak, and everybody has alien DNA in them that science can't. So you're just coming more from like a point of view where you think it's like a literary device, but you don't actually believe that the snake in the Garden of Eden was actually a reptilian.
Yeah, no, if it's, I guess put it in religious terms, it's a really secular way of looking at it, or very, apologetic and sympathetic towards their viewpoints, and trying to reach across the board. It's not this hostile rejection of the idea that there's conspiracies, but at the same time, it's me kind of wanting to say it's like what you're talking about isn't really what you think you're talking about. Like when you have that girlfriend and she yells at you about the coffee, she's not mad about the coffee. She's mad about the fact that she had a shitty day at work. I think it's really hard for culture. Almost everything in life is really hard to talk about it directly, because as soon as you talk about stuff directly, it falls apart.
So how do you take apart some of the videos that I saw yesterday and that I've been doing research on? How do you take apart some of the things that I've seen that they have video for, and how could it be a metaphor if there is evidence?
Well, that's the point that I was getting at. And when you said reptilians, I guess I just assumed, and I shouldn't have, that you were one of the folks that actually believed that was an actual alien or other dimensional race that's physically on our planet. I mean, there's like a book of races of aliens that supposedly the KGB had, and people got copies of it. There are people that truly believe that there are reptilians or lizard people or whatever you want to call it, who are either extra-dimensional beings or aliens that are physically here, the same way that there are people that believe that there are grays that are physically here. But you're not one of those people.
No, it's like this. It's like I'll say it like this. It's kind of like put in a cute way. It's like Hillary Clinton, clearly not a lizard person. Clearly, I mean that's just a rational person would look at that and like, why would they get that skin technology? But honestly, she kind of is a lizard person. I mean, deep down, like of all the things that matter when we talk about lizard people, she hits all those points, and like the small details, like the fact that there's like an alien body, like that's not the important part of that story.
So what is Trump?
Trump, he's probably the same thing. I mean, it's just that break it down. It's.
But there are, well, if I can interrupt for a second, I think what George is alluding to, and you can talk a little bit about this in a second, George, is, and this is a comment I've made before, everybody's a documentary filmmaker now.
Yeah.
You go on YouTube and you type anything in the browser, and there's basically people have homemade documentaries, rudimentary ones about the topic. And there are a lot of people out there that, well, a lot, I don't know if I should say a lot, but there are people out there that truly believe that there is this race of aliens that is reptilian, and and they actually have interbred or found a way to control the Illuminati, and they're very fond of like showing pictures of like George Bush and Bill Clinton and Elvis Presley and whoever else with the eyes slit down so that they look like alien eyes, which is probably mock-up, but or whatever, but and there's actually people that believe this. They believe, and it kind of ties into the one world government or new world order thing too, that that these reptilians are using these power families literally, like they're just off the edge of the scale of vision within our light. So if we could see into that shadow, you would literally see that reptilian that was almost like what the Catholic Church used to call a guardian angel, controlling them and having them do certain things. And then in times of crisis, especially when they're very emotional, their actual lizard-like characteristics physically start to come out. They'll blur on television. They'll start to shapeshift. Their eyes will narrow. Their teeth will fang. Their fingers. Is this what you're talking about?
Some crazy stuff.
Yeah,
man.
yeah. There's actually people that believe this is real.
I would say to that is, do they actually? This is kind of a weird way to think of it. There's what they say they believe, and then there's like the deep down thing that like where they're pointed towards or where they're oriented towards. Is I always kind of wondered this about people who they tell you stories as a conspiracy theorist, and I think all ideology stories, like liberalism, is you tell a story. It's like, well, the world's structured this way, and so we should do this, and then this will result. And conspiracy theories is an ideology.
Right.
If these people, like 9/11 conspiracy theorists,
Right.
I think that's a better, broader example. They believe that 9/11 was an inside job.
Right.
What do they do with the football after that? In a sense that what do they do with themselves? Like I uncovered, let's say I get definitive proof that the world government caused a conspiracy to kill 3,000 people. Then you sit on your couch or you go on YouTube and you make documentaries. Is that your action that you do immediately afterwards? Same with the lizard people. It's like, why am I not this Tuesday assassinating Hillary Clinton? Because that'd be the best for all of us. I'm not saying, of course not. I'm not going to assassinate Hillary Clinton.
I think you're. We're talking about two different things here.
Yes.
And conspiracy theories, which this is all sort of interwoven.
Yes.
So conspiracy theories, we talked a little bit about that 2 weeks ago, and we can talk more about that. But like, I'm a member of a Facebook group called Ancient Aliens. These are people that believe in ancient alien technology, and they truly believe it. They truly believe that. Cro-Magnon man was genetically altered by aliens to do labor here for them because they needed resources on the planet and stuff like that. So there are people that I don't think they're approaching this as a conspiracy theory. They're approaching it as believable science they think is being withheld from us. Like the same kind of people that believe that there were giants, but every time a giant skeleton is found, the Smithsonian that's actually working for the government makes sure it disappears.
Wow.
That kind of thing. And there are people that actually believe that about this reptilian race. And I was going to have you try and convince me, but you don't believe it either.
Yeah,
So,
I think it kind of changed tones or tracks. I think what you're expecting. I think it's this can be still. I think this is the fun conversation is when you kind of look at the engine of conspiracies versus the what's on the shell or on the outside of the car.
Right.
In terms of an activist standpoint, not like just political activism, but like as a body
Right.
and a guy who does something and is a body that does like action stuff. Like you find out that there's giants in the world and Smithsonian's covering up. Doesn't there seem to be kind of a gap between like finding that out and what you do about it? Because I feel like a lot of these conspiracies and the paranormal talk, the Art Bell kind of talk of the world, coast to coast kind of talk. A lot of it feels like it just stays online where their words are, and we can keep on telling ourselves interesting things.
Well, when I see Art Bell, I've been watching a lot of the stuff, and it's all good actually.
Yeah, I love Art Bell.
But what I'm saying, it's like what Frank was saying also is like what like you're saying that you're with us on, or your belief is that there is no belief in any of this. But you also said that you believe in God or you go to church.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Of course it
and
is.
I think that might be
Well,
an alien thing. You know what I mean?
No, but to get back to his other point, I mean, I don't think you can talk broadly about conspiracy and then deconstruct that into examples. That's one thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think that you can interchangeably talk about each different conspiracy, especially if it's scientific, and just interchange them.
Yeah.
So, for example, a talk about whether or not there were giants as a race is a little bit different than a talk about aliens or a talk about, Tesla was actually right and they're hiding all that information from us because we could have free energy at this moment if we wanted it, and all this kind of stuff. So what I think, if we're talking specifically about giants and skeletons, what somebody online is going to say to you is, it's kind of like what was the, talk about conspiracies. What was it? Angels and Demons, the Tom Hanks movie.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, unless you're on the inside and you can actually run through the corridors of the Illuminati and get to the fossils, there's not much more that you can do than to spread the news.
Yeah.
And most people are not on the inside. They're not the Tom Hanks professor in Angels and Demons who actually is allowed to have the run of the Vatican. So they're going to say to you, well, what can I do? If I go to the Smithsonian, they're just going to turn me away. And then I guess they keep hoping that someone with some sort of gravitas within the government or the scientific community or whatever who does have that sort of access blows the whistle.
Well, I saw a video this morning. This morning I woke up to skulls and bones. And I was like, ugh.
Like the Bush thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And crossbones or whatever, but it's crazy. That whole thing, like there was someone who videotaped the initiation.
Right.
And you hear them talking in like Italian demon voices as they were explaining it to me through the video. And I'm freaking out because it's like, yo, dude, even though I don't believe in any of this craziness, but when you see it on video, you're like, wait up, hold up.
Well, it's like you can always you can always theorize based on anomalies or based on very interesting facts or characteristics about something, and come up with a nice little short story. Yeah. For example, excuse me, guys, and you probably know this, like the ancient Maya. We used to ritualistically tattoo themselves and color themselves and file their teeth down and all that kind of stuff. And the
pull
points,
hearts out.
And all that kind of stuff. And I'm like, what a great setting for a vampire story. What a great setting for, like, a vampire is the original king of the ancient Maya. And because they had those characteristics, which obviously had nothing to do with vampirism, but they had those characteristics. So if you're Anne Rice, now you can go and write a book about how, there's one of the elders is, actually was the first king of the Maya, or that kind of thing. And it does get interesting when you look at stuff like serpent deities and the snake in the Garden of Eden and that sort of thing. That's what people who believe in reptilians they'll point to the evidence in plain sight that the people in power are not able to hide.
Yeah.
That's what they'll try and point to. And a lot of it will be about, like I said, it'll be about ancient religions. It'll be about ancient hieroglyphics. It'll be a lot of, well, why are three of the gods, ancient Egyptian gods, serpents, and why did the ancient Mesopotamians also have serpent gods, and so on and so on and so on. And they'll use that in their mind as some sort of proof that this is out there.
And you kind of touched on a good point. Is
even the Mayans, their creation god was a feathered serpent.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they'll say, well, that's just an ancient people who are unable to describe an alien and an alien craft. Mm-hmm. So what they're describing is, a reptilian alien that has the ability to fly, who gave them the knowledge to become who they were. Mm-hmm. I don't agree with it, but I'm telling you that's the kind of thing. We got no sound.
Oh, no, I think.
Maybe
sorry
they can
about
hear
that.
It through
Just keep going. Just keep going.
That's the kind of thing that people on like the Ancient Aliens group on Facebook will point out all the time.
Yeah.
They'll say this isn't about reptilians, but they'll constantly point out how there's all these stories in the Bible which are obviously just alien. Angels are really just aliens, and it's so easy they just didn't know how else to describe it and stuff like that. It's anecdotal evidence as far as I'm concerned, or it's circumstantial, but there are people that believe it as a fact. That is part of their argument and part of their case.
I think you kind of touched on a couple of things. First of all, I think a lot of the whether they're true or not, and honestly, I could be as much of an agnostic about that as anything. I mean, just a lot of these conspiracies, they have a lot of weight to them. A lot of it has to do with the fact that we feel very insecure, and a lot of it's about feeling like you're on the outside of the bigger picture in life, where the government tries to hide the trolls or hide the fact that the serpents, we come from a past race of serpents. And I think one part where I split from a lot of these stories, these kind of mixes of facts and fiction, is I think a lot of times we focus on like the tiny details when you miss the big things. Like to go back, bring it back to, I'm not a Bible thumper. I got a weird way of looking at religion, and it's kind of the same way I'm looking at conspiracies, where it's just like, of course, there's no God. That's a ridiculous, like a big guy up in the sky, but at the same time, there's a God. You know, like it's this weird, goofy contradiction of two different ideas. I like to throw out, and like when you look at the Bible and you skim like the plot points for aliens, that kind of skips over like the content of the Bible. Like the Bible isn't about, it's, you know, in the fun parts of the Bible that aren't boring as sin. The Bible is about, you know, a hippie walking around giving lessons. And I think, you know, when a lot of people look at, right? That's what it is. And he has idiot friends who like don't really get it. So he has to say the lessons twice. Like he's like, you know, Jesus is like, hey, don't, if a guy falls in a hole, you should help him out. And his friends are like, oh, so don't fall in a hole. And then like they start freaking out. Like that's what it is. And I think a lot of people from the outside of religion, even in the inside of religion, they look past the bigger lessons. And I think a lot of times when we,
I think
similar to stories that we have with the paranormal.
I think that the people you're talking about, though, aren't looking to the Bible at that point for any sort of spiritual guidance. They could care less about the content of the Bible. They're looking at the Bible as something that can help them make their point.
Yeah.
In other words, if somebody is looking at the Bible and saying, okay, I'm going to, you know, let's break this down, and you know, and there is no God, but this was actually a phenomenon. No, this is actually like actually the Passion of Christ is actually like a political action. And let's break this down: who the Pharisees were, and well, it couldn't have been Rome, because ancient Rome at the time wouldn't have executed. You know, there are people that will look at it, dissect it politically. Well, they're not looking at the Bible to make a spiritual point. They're looking at it to make a political point.
Yeah,
and I think people are looking at the Bible and trying to say that the angel that appeared to Mary about the Immaculate Conception was actually an alien. They're not looking at it caring about the spiritual point. They're trying to make the point of, see, this is how ancient it is. Even these people 2,000 years ago, you know, this was the only way they could explain this alien presence. So I don't think they give a shit about the message in the Bible.
Yeah.
They're just using it as like, you know, a way to prove their point.
Yeah. But they still try to. It's weird because they trip right past. You know, when they're looking at this one political point, they like the one that involves the extraterrestrial and the preternatural. They walk right past like a big. I mean, like the story of Jesus ends with a confused 32-year-old hammered to a tree. You know, over political pressures that were put on top of him. Like it's a very political story, but I think they kind of. You know, they walk past it and start pointing at what the color of the wallpaper is. I think that's like a big part of everything.
Well, I'm
in
not
our culture
sure.
nowadays is we focus way too much on the substance and not much on the content. You know, like
but again, I don't think that people that are using that as evidence care about that point you're trying to make.
Yeah.
They're just
Probably
trying
not,
to make like for example. I'm no longer an atheist, really, but there was a time that I was an atheist, and I used to get in arguments with Christians all the time. And I would say that, you know, Christianity as a religion could be based entirely on one man's paranoid guilt, because Paul, who was the primary spreader of the gospel shortly after Christ's death, was Saul before he was Paul. And Saul's job was to go around persecuting and killing Jews.
Wow.
And then, like, at one point he had a vision of Christ and it changed his life. Well, that could be pure crushing guilt.
Yeah.
That could be somebody who's been a Nazi officer for 30 years and finally went, holy shit, what am I doing? I mean, it may have nothing to do with God at all. It could simply be guilt, you know? And people got very upset when I would say that. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, I'm sure if I had the psychiatric knowledge to do so, I could write a paper about that and justify it.
Yeah.
You know?
Wow.
You know, you might not agree with it, but I'm saying I could probably explain to you, if I had that knowledge, you know, what conditions he suffered from and you know, what the manifestation was and all the rest of it. You know? I've known plenty of people that, you know, out of guilt have seen out of guilt or out of unhappiness or whatever have seen and heard things.
Yeah.
There was an entire there is a book about that Jesus was a schizophrenic something.
There you go.
There is a book out there.
Right.
There is a book.
So let's take a real quick look here. Anybody saying anything? Any comments from anybody?
Well, right now, none.
Nobody at all with a question or a comment.
Nobody. Don't worry about that. That'll stop.
Is somebody calling? Is somebody calling
Yeah,
you?
but I turned it off over here. It
Are
just
they
takes
trying to
time
call
to turn
in?
off.
Oh,
over
okay.
there.
They trying to call in? All right. Well, I mean, so, well, that's, I mean, are you getting the phone there?
I'm turning it off so you can still watch us.
All right. There you go.
Mario Vanelzian.
Vitalozi, yeah.
Hey.
He's joined us.
Oh, that's good. That's
Welcome,
good.
Mario.
Again, if anybody's got any questions, comments, thoughts on or off topic, feel free to dialogue box them. But currently, as we're still setting up, there's no call-in line or any of that kind of stuff. So we are just dialogue box it, I guess, right there on Facebook where it's being broadcast.
Well, they could actually call in, but it's my phone unless you want to put your
Right,
phone
and then
up.
you'd keep interrupting the feed.
Yeah,
So
Oh, no, it wouldn't interrupt the feed at all because I'm.
Well,
feeding
but
from
you
in
don't feel
there.
comfortable giving your number.
Not at the moment.
Yeah. So back to dialogue box in. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, or anything like that. Now, something else that you mentioned that you wanted to talk about that I think may be a little less out there
Yes.
than reptilian beings puppet running the Bush family.
Yeah.
Is a one world government or a new world order.
Yeah.
Or that kind of thing. Now, is that something also that you believe in, or is that something that you're just musing about as well?
The same thing. But again, it's like a really powerful engine in the way that, to go back to the Bible, like, who cares if Jesus died on the cross or not? That's a pretty good story of, a guy has a kid and then gets nailed to a tree. Same with No World Order. I think it's just interesting how our minds go to that and our minds try to look at the world that way. I think it gets really close to how things are. I think the difference between like New World Order, there's no what I see in the world and how it's controlled is there's no room. There's no, like in Dr. Strangelove, where there's that giant control room and a bunch of guys are smoking cigars and like the guy in the back saying like pull the bullet. Like there's not that, but in that story, in that cynical imagination, the most cynical things those guys do, they still produce those outputs. Without those people, our world's still just as cynical. It's just things happen just kind of congruently.
Right.
Like, when you fuck somebody, you don't pre-plan what you're going to do. You just kind of make it up as you go. That's kind of how our world is right now. It's just a lot of bad things are happening, and there's not a face behind it, but it's easy to personify that evil and all the kind of crappy stuff in the world.
Well, again, so now with the New World Order, which also we're just, I guess, musing about. I mean, the thing that's a little bit more realistic about that, and the few different theories on it, is people will say that there's an Illuminati.
Yeah.
People will say that you need to look no further than the Freemasons.
Right.
And people like that. Even going back to the Bible thing, there are people that will say that the Illuminati and the Freemasons and all this is all tied into the Knights Templar, and that Jesus didn't really die and he married Mary Magdalene and their bloodline.
Right.
So again, is there a handful of people that live like 7 miles underground and run the world? No, I don't think so. But if you're telling me that, like, if somebody wanted to try and say to me that, like, the Freemasons and the Vatican and certain aspects of every superpower government are all in on something that they're not letting anybody else know, and it's to achieve a certain end in a certain future, I could buy that.
Yeah.
I could buy that.
Here's something I always kind of like to
I could easily buy that.
play with it in my head. Are you fine with that? Or
Fine with it?
If that was the reality, or is that something to push against?
Honest to God, at this point, man, my job is to get laughs about it.
Yeah.
I'm really,
Right.
it's like, am I fine with it? in my own little way, one show at a time. I'm not fine with it, and I'll try and change whatever hearts and minds I can.
Yeah.
Am I gonna put on a sackcloth and go live somewhere or become like a frontline activist warrior about it? No.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not particularly fine with that. But again, I think it's the kind of thing where I'm not sure how much damage I can do not being fine about it.
Yeah. You know, it's always fun. I like to imagine with like New World Orders. Like, let's say, let's walk into a room and pretend or act as if it is real.
Right.
What's the personalities behind it? You know what I mean? Because like whenever we see like the New World Order and like the shadow Rothschilds kind of meeting in a business meeting, it's always shadows and guys smoking cigars.
Right.
Those guys have to get bored every now and then. They have to fuck up at work. There has to be like interior politics between the two, or somebody's like passive aggressively. They have to have secretaries. I always think that's a fun thing to imagine. I think that's a fun part of the conspiracy, just to kind of imagine. It's just like, what if, like, do they feel regret?
I don't think. I mean, if we're imagining that there is a new world order that's a bunch of Rothschilds and all those kind of things, I'm sure there's infighting, but it's probably on a level we would never hear about.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that they get in trouble and make mistakes and screw their secretaries and all the rest of it. But they have very high priced cleaners to make sure that nobody finds out.
Yeah.
So
you've been around. I mean, we've all been around.
You know,
people who are just like obscenely rich, so rich that there's like a bubble around them, and there's always something kind of awkward about them, right? And they don't know how to they don't know how to behave in situations where they're outside like the really rich, insane bubble that they have.
I don't know what you're trying to tell me, George, so you might as well just say it.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to try to cut that noise out. I'll be right back.
Oh, all right.
Okay,
Go ahead, man.
Hey, there's a gang fight happening next door.
If nothing else, shut the doors. That it would just help a little bit, I think.
I don't remember where I was. So yeah, we've all been around rich idiots, like people who have like obscene amount of money, like trust fund kids. They live in a bubble, and it's kind of hard for them to operate around 99% of the general public.
Right.
If you run the Illuminati, you have to be like 10 times more awkward than the most awkward trust fund kid in the world. And a lot of these kids are like snobby, and they're not all of them, but a lot of them are snobby and kind of shitty, and look at you as an object and not as a person. But also, all of them are a little awkward and a little insecure. You know, I wonder what makes a Rothschild or the guy who's sitting in the big chair in the conspiracy theory room. I wonder what makes him insecure, or he has those little moments of like anxiety in them. You know, it's hard to imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of two answers. It's probably either they don't have that, because they have so much wealth and so much power, or they have that maybe based on what you were talking about with like some sort of infighting, like they're going to lose their chair to somebody else. And I guess that's when all the espionage and subterfuge and all that kind of stuff, again, if nothing else, going back to those Tom Hanks movies about the Mary Magdalene thing. I guess that's when Code. I guess that's when all that stuff comes into play. You know, that whole world that we have no knowledge of. I mean, but I'm sure that probably the only thing that they get nervous about, if they do exist, is losing what they have.
There's nobody more insecure than a king.
Right.
That kind of mentality.
That's probably the only thing that they get nervous about. But I mean,
that's got to be a long fall too, because I come home tonight and everything in my apartment's gone.
Right.
Like I'm out $300 basically. I'm out a couch and a cat. Like that's nothing.
Right.
These guys, they, as improbable as it is, if they have a fall from grace, they're falling from the top of the mountain out of 7 billion people. I can't remember how many people are in the world right now, but out of 7 billion people, that's got to be some kind of thing they just want to hold on to. Like I have a buddy, neighbors to a rich person. He's in Florida. He chained up his bike to her fence, and she came over a fence, like a bike on a fence, and she got really protective about it. It's like, that's my fence. You can't use that. I'm gonna take it away in a second. You know,
Right.
imagine that, but with.
But you know
world.
something? I don't blame her for saying anything.
Yeah.
You know, most of this conspiracy craziness, as I call it, it is crazy. I mean, some of it could be true. Some of it just a bunch of nut jobs.
Yeah.
But if I own my property and you chain your bike to my fence, I'm gonna cut the fence out and throw your bike into my yard.
Right.
You know what I mean? So
But then
Well,
you
what-
also have to
what-
look at the reality of the.
Yeah.
You also have to look at the reality of the fact is, you know, if you take Barack Obama's 2 terms out of it, we've had a Clinton or a Bush as president for the past 24 years,
wow.
right? And maybe another 4 to 8 years of that on top of it.
Yeah.
So you can make the argument that like 2 families are running this country.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, and I think a lot of people who inexplicably don't like Hillary, that's part of what they don't like about her, is
Okay.
that she's one of the 2 people that have been there for one of the 2 franchises that have been there for
Yeah.
so long.
Well,
and in power for so long.
I kind of want to rewind because George, you kind of put an interesting thing. I was kind of just because I guess if you're in that mentality, if like there's like a bike on your fence, like you aggressively go against the fence. What gets taken when you come home tonight and you see, hypothetically, you have a fence, like you see a bike on your fence? What's being taken away from you? I mean, it's your property, but you don't. I'm like in the past week, how much have you cared about your fence?
That's the thing. A lot
Yeah.
of people say, "What's been taken away from you? What's going to be this?"
Yeah.
You know what? I don't live in that world.
Yeah.
I live in a world where I'm coming home and your bike is on my fence and I want it off. That's the world I live in.
Yeah.
You know, is it doing anything for me? No. Is it bothering me? No. But you know what? I don't want it on my fence. So what?
I understand that.
You know, that's the way I live. So
Yeah.
what? Now, if you are on top of my fence and you know something, I had a motorcycle outside of my other radio station in Brooklyn for a long
Right.
time.
Yeah, yeah.
And all the kids sat on it, broke it, never said anything. They were in the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Kids, you know. But they never left anything on my property. They
Right.
would just
Yeah.
damage my shit, you know.
Right.
And I didn't care.
Yeah.
You know, but in all reality, what I'm just answering to you is like, it's like, it's not ridiculous for someone not to want your shit on their fence.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. You know, it's not ridiculous. You know, even if it's not
Yeah.
bothering them, it's their
I'm
their
lost.
fence.
How does this have to do with the Illuminati?
Well,
What
it's
were we
about
what
talking
he was
about?
talking
property
about.
and insecurity and the fact that the stuff we have ownership of, we get
Right.
protective of, and that's kind of it becomes like a point of vulnerability at times and something that we fight really hard to try to protect. So, you know,
Okay.
if a fence to like working class, middle class, maybe I don't know which range you live in, a fence has a lot of value to somebody, you know, enough that there will be contention and slight, mild hostility. What do you think the behavior of somebody who's the Illuminati, you know, who's especially the guy who's number 1 in the tier, you know?
Yeah, well, I've already said if they have
Yeah.
any anxiety, I'm sure it's only about losing what they have.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they don't have anything that resembles anxiety. They don't have anxiety about any of the kind of things we have anxiety about.
No way.
But
Yeah.
they have anxiety about the same way any king has about being poisoned and his brother is now king.
Yeah.
You know, that sort of thing. I mean, for sure. But, I mean, you could make the argument that, well, I've heard both arguments made about Donald Trump. I've heard the argument made about Donald Trump that he is actually a member of the Illuminati and they're going to flat out rule through him. I've also heard that the Illuminati feels that the part of the Illuminati that is backing things as usual who want Hillary have made it possible for Trump to get the nomination because they don't feel he can get elected. So I've heard both versions of the Illuminati being behind the Trump candidacy.
I'd interpret it as like no matter who wins, it's just they don't care. You know what I mean? They're both behind. I mean, what's the point? If you have the Illuminati, what's the point of having democracy unless you're going to give the illusion of choice?
Well, I don't think
That-
it's about that. I think
Yeah.
it's about control.
Yeah.
They want to be in control of whoever is, theoretically, they want to be in control of the puppet, I guess, so to speak.
But then they'd really fuck up if they didn't rig the contest beforehand. You know what I mean? If they left like a 1% chance to, I mean, if I was in charge of Illuminati, if I was doing like I don't know, a fancy draft of the Illuminati,
right?
And a lot of times I hear the stories of like, you know, like remember Bush Gore? Everybody's calling it Coke or Pepsi. Like we both kind of, you know, people that bent thought that both of them were under control of, you know, let's say New World Order or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's a lot of different organizations. You know, like if I mean, the story can fit for both people, and I think it's weird to have an Illuminati where they can lose. You know what I mean? Like, what would happen if either, let's say, Illuminatis are backing Hillary? What happens if they fuck up and it rains on a Sunday? That just makes enough.
I don't know, the
same
same thing that happened to Lincoln and Harrison and Kennedy and the rest of them. You know, if the guy they didn't want gets in, one way or another, we find a way to get him out.
Well, they tried Reagan, but he was just too tough for him.
I mean, I
Pinkley.
think,
oh man,
it's that kind of thing.
Here's that bullet.
Here's something about conspiracies or not conspiracies, assassinations, and you know, while we're talking about ideology, I noticed that like as we go through history, like the assassins, their excuses get goofier and goofier. You know, you go back to like Lincoln and like what's his name, John Wilkes Booth was like, I'm doing this for the South, and then you go to like mid '60s, you got Robert Kennedy, Sirhan. Am I getting that right? Yeah, he
that was
you know,
Robert. Yes.
Yeah, it was over Islamic issues, I think, if I remember right. And then by the time you get to the 80s, assassinations in the 80s is a very 80s assassination. You know, like Hinckley was doing it for Jodie Foster.
Right.
Like that's what, and Squeaky Fromm was for Charlie Manson. Sam Beck, that's a guy, right? He tried to kill Nixon. Fly plane into Nixon. You remember that guy? He was like a Santa Claus guy.
I didn't even know Nixon had an assassination
plot. This guy sucked at it. He sucked so much. He was like Santa Claus. This guy, Google him. He's fun. By the way, Google most of the assassination attempt people. Like they're all free. They're all like released on parole. It's insane. Like we have more presidential assassins walking around in the world than any time in history. But Sam Beck, if I'm getting the name right, he was like a fucking divorced mall Santa Claus who like would just eat too much McDonald's, and he had the plan to fly a plane into the White House to try to kill Nixon because everybody hated him towards the end of his.
That one.
So it's a good story.
Yeah, no, that one I never heard.
Yeah,
I don't even know that Nixon was going to try. I wouldn't even believe it. I was like, what? Serious?
Although if you were to kill one guy, you know, Nixon, I think.
I mean,
He's a Quaker.
Yeah, I mean,
Quakers are not bad people.
I'm a Quaker. That's how I practice.
There's nothing wrong with Quakers.
I think that the Quakers are the true religion. I really do.
Yeah.
No matter what anyone says.
Yeah, I used to be a community organizer. I grew up Catholic and Protestant. It was like a mixed household, and for a while I never practiced anything, and then I came into the city and I want to continue being a community organizer.
Right.
And I came into the Quaker church because they have a good history of just like liberal activists, politics. Like they won like the Nobel Peace Prize in '49. You know, like that's how big they are. And like they made a lot of the infrastructure of the Underground Railroad. So I went to them to get involved, and I was kind of falling out of political activism. I just kind of got burned out, and it's too sad to kind of push your head against that all the time. But I really like the church. I like how they're organized. And I like how they articulate like that the light of God's in everybody. I think that's one of them. I mean, not to get too in that mode, but I think that's a really powerful way to talk about religion and to frame religion.
Well, what I found out about the Quakers, what I really like about them is their stand on equality.
Yeah.
That's where I really, really, really like, wow, this is cool.
Yeah.
Now, is it real? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is it real? I don't know, but one day I'll probably go to a Quaker church and start talking.
Well, first of all, it's not a church; it's a meeting house.
A meeting house. Okay, thank you. I didn't know. Are you a Quaker?
My Quaker? No, but I've read a book.
Okay, I need a
meeting house. You know.
Well, then I need to talk to you before I go there.
Yeah. No, I mean.
You should go to my meeting. It's Brooklyn Friends House. It's you know J Street Metro Tech. Yeah.
I pretty much know all of Brooklyn.
Yeah, you know where the Transit Museum is? Across the street from the Transit Museum.
All right.
Yeah, down the block from the Macy's. It's there.
So when you talk about the New World Order stuff, and you talk about groups like the Skull and Bones thing or whatever it was, the Bush thing, and the Freemasons and all that. So do these folks have, I mean, I'm sure just like any other group of powerful people, through nepotism and contacts, you have power. But do these folks have any knowledge or anything that the average person doesn't have? Any sort of government access, any sort of knowledge of upcoming events, any sort of knowledge of a bigger plan, you know? And it's interesting to think about. You know, there's that whole theory about supposedly there's some sort of bunker beneath the Denver airport, and
with the art at the airport, right? It's creepy.
And with absolutely no reason, there's like a Freemason plaque right in the middle of the airport that was laid. And people will look at that and they'll say, well, what the hell is this?
Did they build the airport?
There's a whole level to the airport that was supposed to be automatic baggage handling that they decided not to go with after spending millions of dollars to install. So now it's just basically a ghost floor. And people will say, at the end of that floor, if you keep walking, there are offices that as you get closer to the offices, security will turn you away. And then people will say that there are floors under that and all that sort of thing. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much of this exists. But if somebody said to me, you know, if some CIA guy said to me, look, dude, you know, there's no Illuminati. What's underneath the Denver airport is, you know, 7 floors down, there's a nuclear launch site. There's a bunker for the president. There's, you know, in case of a nuclear attack, there's this, that, or the other thing. I'd believe that. Yeah. I'd believe that while they were building an airport, they throw up a little mini city below just in case to keep the powerful
like
safe
Fallout.
if some shit went down. I believe that. I believe that they would do that. Absolutely.
That reminds me, I grew up for a minute in Dayton, Ohio, where like Project Blue Book, the UFO thing took place. That's where it was compiled, I think. I can't remember. It's something to do with Blue Book. And I remember like all my family friends were military people, and they took us through Wright Pat and a tour of it, and we were on the little gator driving around, and there's this giant corrugated, you know, it's like metal corrugated building, like the size of probably the Broadway, the building we're in right now.
Right.
And we drove around all 4 corners, and there were guards posted on every corner. There were no doorways. There was no way to get in. It's just this creepy building that didn't do what a building should do in our normal imagination. Like that's where, I don't know, the aliens
this goes all the way back to the conversation we were having with Marcy and a couple other people, where if you think you see an alien, what you might just basically be seeing is like some sort of advanced Air Force project that nobody's telling you anything about.
A lot of people talk about Air Force
and
Area 51 with that.
I think there's, you know, buildings like that too, where this is a CIA safe house, or this is a training center for something, or whatever, and it's just a nondescript building with guards, and the average person isn't allowed to know.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that like, you know, that's where Christ's bloodline goes to spend their summer vacation.
No.
You know, I mean, it's just, you know what I mean? It just means that it's got a function that as you go further up the security clearance chain, you're not allowed to know.
Yeah.
If you're not at a certain, you know, need to know kind of higher level basis.
Just, you know.
But, you know, if you talk to the guy, I mean, I've seen him on TV, I forget his name, but the guy who wrote, you know, the Da Vinci Code and Angels and Demons.
Dan Brown.
I mean, he believes it like we believe that this wood is right here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That you know, that Christ and Mary Magdalene, and that's their children, and blah, 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 blah.
You know,
he believes it.
If I was walking past a building that had no doors or windows and there was people on each corner, I'd keep walking.
Right.
You know, it's like, you know what?
And you know what?
That's none of my business.
And I guarantee you, somebody with true government knowledge, and I don't mean in any kind of conspiracy way. I mean, you know, I mean that sort of spook way with like CIA and FBI or whatever, would say to you, George, you walk by those buildings all the time, you just don't know it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but a plane that we don't know about that the Air Force is developing, flying at a height that nobody's ever seen before, at a speed nobody's ever seen before, doesn't mean that plane's from Mars. It just means somebody built that plane.
I definitely understand that.
You know, and it could be our own government, and they're just keeping us in the dark about that kind of stuff.
There's just great photographer, you know, talking about, you know, because what we get is like the little scraps outside, you know, like the fact that you show something to be a secret tells you a lot of information. There's at least, like I know in Right Pat in that giant building, there's some secret weird ass shit inside of there, like just because they went through so much lengths of trying to hide it. There's this great photographer called Trevor Paglen, and his big thing is like the shadow world of the government. So what he does is, all those when they, like Jason Bourne shit, where like they take somebody in rendition and they take them to some place in Siberia or like Iran. I don't know where the fuck they take them, but like I don't know if I can cuss here. Is that good? But they just take them whatever, like Wyoming, and just like beat the shit out of them with a belt. Those planes that take those people there, those are classified. But what's not classified are the gas airplanes that supply gasoline for those planes. So
the refueling planes?
The refueling planes. So he goes around the world collecting all the patches from those things, and it's like, where are the secret? Like the patches will have like cool like cartoon characters, like where are the secret behind the secret? Or he'll do other stuff, go to like black ops sites or like Area 51 classified sites.
Right.
And those things are there's like maybe like a 100-mile radius, you can't get in there. So he'll go at mile 101 with the super long telezoom camera and try to get the photo as close as possible. Or he'll point his camera towards the sky and track spy satellites.
I don't believe any of that stuff anymore, only because of. I'm not saying I don't believe it. I'm just saying that I don't even think visual evidence is enough anymore.
Yeah.
Because like Hollywood can do so much.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, I like the picture you just showed me. You know what? Steven Spielberg can do that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you show me video footage of what you call an alien craft, but you see a movie that's as well made as like the first Independence Day was, and at some point you go like, Hollywood can do this anyway, So at what point can... It's almost like, they say everybody's got a cell phone and they got a camera on their cell phone so they can videotape whatever. Well, you know what? I mean, Hollywood can make shit look real as, it can be. And so I don't even really trust video evidence anymore.
Yeah.
Al Martin just joined us.
Oh, did he? Hello, Al.
Hey, Al.
What's up, Al? Yeah, I mean, I think that part of the reason that the conspiracy theory as an entity has grown is, once again, it's another thing that's gotten fat off of technology.
Yeah.
I'm sure that all the way up until maybe people talking about conspiracy theory about JFK, right? So I'm sure, I mean, did anybody was there even such a thing as a conspiracy theory in the 20s, 30s, 40s, or 50s? I mean, there might have been like guys talking about doing stuff on the inside and why the Stark Rockefeller or whatever, but I think conspiracy, there was Roswell, I guess, but I think conspiracy really, it was with the Kennedy assassination, really came into everybody's frame of reference. And then now, everything that we can create technologically is so real that it makes it easier to believe it actually exists otherwise than just on a green screen.
It's kind of interesting you point that out because, from there, it kind of feels like the seed of conspiracy where we started to think like this is the baby boomer generation. What's in the imagination of a baby boomer when you're 10 is space aliens. It's not only exciting but also kind of stirs you up a little bit. And then there's the great heartbreak of the trauma of not only JFK but all the things that are in association with that, like especially the cultural revolution going straight into today. And I think maybe a lot of conspiracies come out after trauma because you have like the 9/11 attacks as well.
To we're at now. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, and it's almost, quite frankly, I'm willing to entertain just about anything, but it gets almost sickening. There are already videos on YouTube calling Orlando and Dallas hoaxes.
Yeah.
They're already hoax
For
videos.
real?
Already on YouTube.
That's crazy.
And that is not...
Tell that to the family.
Right, and that's that is something that certainly didn't happen before the advent of all the technology that we have now. No. So, I mean, but that's kind of like a whole different story. And kind of a sad place to leave it, so we're not leaving it there. How much time do we have left?
1 minute.
Okay, everybody share a happy thought. What the fuck? I mean, we don't talk about people calling. You know
what? All those people listening today, you did a great job today. We appreciate you. And you know what? Tomorrow's going to be even better. You're going to kick ass at work.
It's just weird, the whole thing about, conspiracies because, I mean, there are conspiracies.
Yeah.
There are conspiracies. I mean, Vietnam, how we got into Vietnam was a conspiracy.
Tompkins.
Yep. Yeah. And that was a total fake whitewash job. Never happened. I mean, so there are conspiracies, but just because there are conspiracies doesn't mean that everything's a conspiracy.
Oh, definitely.
Just because
Yeah.
this happened there doesn't mean that every time that something looks like that happened, it's a conspiracy.
No.
And I think if I had any, and we'll get into this when we get into the political stuff on other shows with the trolling trolls, but I think, a lot of people say, our government, don't you think they're capable of that? I mean, yeah. Oh, we lost the feed.
Yeah, over there. Not here.
Okay, so we'll wrap it up here. I mean, yeah, but I think just because they did it once doesn't mean that every time something happens, they did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a big distraction. That's all that is. Let's distract from the truth.
Right.
Let's distract from what's really going on. Let's just distract.
No, I agree. All right, guys. Well, I guess we got to wrap it up because we ran out of Facebook film. John, thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure having you.
Twitter address?
Absolutely.
All right.
Leave whatever you want.
If you
Drop
want
whatever
to
you
reach
want,
me, you can find me at America's Comic on Twitter, or you can call me at 786-493-3441 if you're hot and you want to bang.
There you go.
I need
Nice.
sex. Like it's
Nice.
been a year.
My mom listens to this.
Oh, I'm
John.
sorry. I'm sorry. Is she beautiful?
My mom? Yes, she's a lovely lady.
Well, you should call me up. What's your name?
Yeah, she's a lovely,
I'm not gonna
lovely
hit
lady.
anything.
All right. Well, we're going to say goodbye.
Yeah, George, you got to say goodbye, too.
Well, thank you all for listening, and just stay out of the way of flying saucers and government bullets.
Yeah. If you
That's what I would say.
If you see a beam coming out of a pie-shaped disc,
Run the other
go
way.
the other way.
You see a guy with an earpiece and a black suit near you,
go the other way.
Go the other way.
If you see somebody who looks like a businessman turning into an iguana, go the other way.
Run the other way.
If you ever run into a book depository, just get out of town.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, just.
Yeah, there you go.
What's a book depository, anyways?
All right, that's it.
Have a good one.
Cool.
Thank you,
All right,
Frank.
man.
Thank you very much. This has been a lot of fun.
No problem, bro.
Yeah, this is awesome.